It's safe to say we're currently living through a golden age for swordplay games. Sekiro and Ghost of Tsushima lead a pack of accomplished duelers where every strike, lunge and parry feels supremely satisfying. Hoping to find a place among them is Onimusha Way of the Sword, Capcom's long-awaited return to a series slumbering since the PS2 days. And, based on a small sample I've been able to play at Gamescom 2025, I'd say its chances are looking very good indeed.
No challenge.
Set in a dark fantasy reimagining of Kyoto during the Edo period of Japan, Onimusha Way of the Sword has you take up the sharpened blades of Miyamoto Musashi, a swordsman sporting both the face of the late legendary actor Mifune Toshiro and a talking gauntlet that eats the souls of dead enemies.
The power of the Yoni is spreading in your eyes as well. It must have been awakened by the Dark Master of sorts.
What's happening?
That second point is the more pertinent one. Fallen foes drop souls, represented by flames that float around the battlefield before being sucked up by your hungry jewelry. Right, before you get any wrong ideas, Onimusha may have souls, but it is absolutely not a Souls-like. On its default action difficulty setting, Way of the Sword is not particularly punishing, at least not in this 30-minute demo, which admittedly does feel plucked from a very early stage in the story. It certainly requires skill to get the most out of its enjoyably flashy combat, but generous parry windows, a block that protects from all angles, and cushioned enemy attacks mean Onimusha seems on track to be one for all action fans, not just the FromSoft fanatics. And while I would have liked to have faced a steeper challenge in this demo, the foes I faced, especially the end of level boss, felt well judged.
That's your best.
I'm particularly impressed by how combat is built on a foundation of both health and stamina. Enemies are, of course, defeated by bottoming out their health bars, but each time you strike or deflect their attacks, you erode away their stamina bar. If that hits zero, the foe becomes exhausted, quite literally pausing to catch their breath. This is, of course, the perfect time to strike. A single button press triggers a Break Isun move that violently dismembers your target. The animations are gloriously extravagant and can be chained together if a couple of enemies have been exhausted at the same time. For regular enemies, breaking their stamina spells instant death, and because parries quickly exhaust fodder, you're rewarded for honing that skill. You take less damage and get to witness cool kills. I'm deeply amused by how you can deflect arrows back at archers who then, winded by their own projectile, stand around simply awaiting their fate of single-click decapitation. But things change when it comes to boss fights. The demo's final clash against the exuberant Sasaki Ganryu, a tall, gangly samurai powered up by his own gauntlet, is a much fiercer affair in which you'll deplete his stamina bar at least once before being able to deal the final blow. In this situation, an alternative version of Break Isun plots two marks on your target. Strike the red one, and you'll be rewarded with a burst of extra damage. Hit the purple to generate a bonus batch of souls. And that brings us back to souls. These flickering flames are colour-coded. Red souls are used to purchase upgrades, while blue souls feed your Oni power gauge, which when full can be used to unleash special attacks. Yellow souls, meanwhile, are rarer and replenish your health. All three are vital, not just for their individual properties, but for how they form a cycle. For instance, in the demo, Musashi was equipped with the Two Celestials, a twin dagger special weapon that reaps yellow souls from fallen enemies. It can only be used when the Oni power gauge is topped off. As it's a powerful attack that requires resources, it's sensible to use it against tougher opponents who, naturally, deal more damage. Killing such foes with the Two Celestials basically refunds damage that you take thanks to the yellow souls the attack creates. And so there's the cycle. You kill foes to gain blue souls, which powers up the ability to use special attacks, which cause your enemy to drop yellow souls, which instantly heal you from the wounds sustained during that fight. It perhaps doesn't feel quite that elegant in game, but there's a clear system upon which battle thrives. There are other examples of that too. Successful parries generously build a diamond-shaped meter that eventually causes your blade to temporarily erupt with damage-buffing blue sparks. Hitting that mark feels fantastic. The animation alone makes it feel as if the battle has been hit by a shot of adrenaline. But if you can continue a successful chain of deflects, you can sustain that buff seemingly indefinitely. It's another smart system that rewards consistent skill with your blade. It's only when I came to write this preview that I realised that Onimusha is very much a game about managing gauges and meters. You need to deplete health bars and stamina meters, build power gauges, and keep other buff providing vessels topped up. On paper, that may sound dull and overly mathematical for a game about supernatural samurai fighting through demon-infested feudal Japan, but in practice, it works well. That's entirely down to the fact that the implement for juggling those meters, your sword, feels fantastic to wield. The parry window may be wide, but the ringing clang of a deflect is supremely satisfying, especially because the subsequent counterattack animation is so extravagantly slick. Slicing through the amusingly gross regular Genma enemies, which range from mutant swordsmen to what I can only describe as demonic floating Furby heads, feels great, but it's the boss fight that really sold me on Onimusha's swordplay credentials. There's almost certainly a secret science to nailing the feel of when steel lands on steel, and Capcom has absolutely cracked that. There's an energetic flow each time the warriors' blades meet and push each other away. And while the duel against Ganryu doesn't feel destined to go down as an all-timer, it is ultimately too easy to enter those halls. I think it acts as a decent enough promise that, further into the campaign, there will be something that stands up to the very best of Ghost of Tsushima. The Gamescom demo may have been short, little more than some winding paths and a boss fight in a temple, but it's more than enough to convince me that Onimusha Way of the Sword is built on rock-solid swordplay fundamentals. I'm genuinely excited to master them and take on its campaign's toughest challenges. But it's also made me curious about several other things. As a tutorial-styled section, the demo had no real exploration opportunities, so it's currently unclear what kind of scope the environments will work with. Then there's the story, which caught me off guard with its humour. There's hints of an amusingly rocky relationship between Musashi and the voice inside his Oni gauntlet.
To purify this temple, you're only to find the source of this mission.
Right, Gauntlet Lady. Enough of that. If you're awake, I've got
I
questions.
refuse.
You listen here.
I won't answer. Questions or otherwise. To Gauntlet Lady.
And the pre-boss battle banter was just on the right side of goofy. I'm fascinated to see where Capcom has drawn the line between a dark samurai tale and sparky anime humour. But even if that line ultimately ends up drawing an uneven balance, I'm confident Onimusha's razor-sharp combat will more than make up for a few bad jokes. For more from Capcom, check out our Gamescom 2025 previews of Resident Evil Requiem and Pragmata. And for everything else, stick with IGN.
Neutralize us?
Looks like we're gonna have to fight our way through. Get ready.
After a period of time, video game genres tend to calcify. They establish firm rule sets that are difficult to break. This leads to familiarity and, eventually, repetition. How many third-person shooters have you played that all kind of felt the same? Capcom is trying to break the rules with Pragmata, a sci-fi shooter in which you have to hack every enemy before you can do any damage to them. It's a smart idea, one we've now had a chance to explore further at Gamescom 2025. But while it produces a combat experience quite different to anything I've played before, I'm wondering if that same level of ingenuity will be felt in Pragmata's exploration and level design too.
Hey, what did you just do?
Over the past decade or so, perhaps the most popular method to spice up shooters has been increased speed and movement. See games like Vanquish, Titanfall and Doom Eternal. Pragmata twists the dial in the opposite direction, slowing the tempo right down in favour of making each individual combat engagement longer and more complex. Hugh, your armoured astronaut, cannot put a dent in the enemy robots until your mysterious synthetic child sidekick, Diana, hacks through their firewall. This is done via a quick minigame. Aiming at a foe displays a grid on which you must draw a line, passing through damage-increasing blue tiles on the way to an endpoint. Succeed, and your weapon's free to pump your target full of lead. The hacking challenge varies depending on your targets. Flimsy flying drones are protected by a mere 3x3 grid, while big chunky mechs have a larger 5x5 grid that may also feature blockers that must be avoided as you snake towards the finish line. Acquiring hacking nodes during your travels will also populate the grid with additional tiles that, when passed through, apply additional effects such as lowering an enemy's defense, allowing you to deal greater damage upon the hack's completion. While all this initially requires some mental recalibration to get to grips with, after chewing through 3 or 4 enemies, it became second nature, and perhaps a little too easy. At least during the demo's sample section, enemies only arrived in 1s and 2s, certainly a concession to the fact that you have to solve a puzzle in real time as an android tries to rip you apart. But by the midpoint of a short half-an-hour demo, I was already eager for an increased challenge, be that via increased enemy numbers, more complex hacking challenges, or, ideally, a mix of both. I fully expect that's the thesis behind Pragmata's difficulty curve, but I hope it doesn't take too long to find the right balance. The best example of where things may be headed is the Sector Guard boss battle, the demo's explosive finale. This big boy bipedal bot is armed with multi-missile launchers that cause the entire arena floor to light up with warning beacons as warheads fly through the air. The challenge, of course, is to avoid the incoming rockets while simultaneously hacking through the robot's firewalls. And since this is a boss, a single hack won't do. You need to repeatedly burn through different layers of security as the battle rages on. This is the kind of multitasking juggling act that I hope Pragmata can continually deliver as the campaign opens up. The Sector Guard battle also introduces one of Pragmata's flashier abilities. Diana has a sort of ultimate hack called Overdrive Protocol, which stuns all enemies around you and opens them up to damage. Triggering this requires filling a meter that slowly builds each time you perform a regular hack. I expect such a skill will be utterly invaluable when facing a room full of relentless enemies, but a single boss wasn't the ideal testing ground, especially when I could hold it in place using a stasis gun that deploys a large disabling dome. While I'd have liked a fiercer sampling of what this new combat system is capable of, it certainly sparks my imagination. The hacking mechanic also creates a functioning symbiotic relationship between Hugh and Diana. They simply cannot survive without each other, and I hope that theme becomes something meaningful as the story progresses. Unfortunately, the Gamescom demo was light on narrative, only divulging that Hugh is stranded in a damaged lunar base and must find his way back to Earth. We'll have to wait and see if this new dynamic duo has any substance in their relationship, and if their adventure will be quite as reality-shatteringly weird as Pragmata's debut trailer was, back in 2020. The other thing I'm curious to see more of is Pragmata's wider exploration and adventure design. This demo featured minimal combat engagements, and so often I was running through the station without an enemy in sight. That meant the focus for long stretches was entirely on navigating the environment, done so via some light platforming. I appreciate how each character's combat abilities are repurposed here. Hugh's suit thrusters, used to dodge attacks, are here utilised to leap further or hover over long drops. Diana's hacking skills can rewire the facility's mechanised components, raising or retracting pillars in Pragmata's equivalent of moving crates around. It's a fine starting point, but I'd have liked the exploration to have its own interesting mechanical quirk to mirror the efforts made with combat. There are terminals to hack and obstacles to power down that make use of a couple of bespoke but basic minigames, but at least in this section, they don't feel like a cohesive part of the experience in the same way the combat hacking does. And considering the even balance of battle and exploration in this demo, I think both halves need to be equally interesting. With any luck, those environmental hacks will develop over time to unlock a more interesting approach to level design. Another issue is that navigation is marred by an environment that looks near identical no matter what room you're in, resulting in a bit of involuntary backtracking and accidentally running in circles. My goal through the demo was to restore power by hacking 5 different terminals, each hidden somewhere in the base. But as I explored, there was no telling if I was in an engineering bay, a server room, or a command center. This is visually unfulfilling, but more crucially, it makes it difficult to plot the space out in your head. I'd be less concerned if this demo had been more linear, but the openness of the area meant I had to scratch my head a couple of times while searching for the next terminal, especially as there's no map. My hope is that, as Hugh and Diana delve deeper into the facility's bowels, the NASA in the year 3000 aesthetic evolves to create more distinct, readable play spaces.
Emergency lockdown for all on-site locations. Please complete a manual reboot of the power plant controller to fully restore operations.
That was the last of them.
Capcom has been on an almost decade-long winning streak, but that streak has been rooted in smart approaches to its legacy games. Where it has tripped up recently is with brand new original ideas. 2023's Exoprimal has already faded from memory. I hope that's not the fate for Pragmata. It's a bold thing to reinvent the fundamentals of a genre as traditional as the shooter. I would really love to see its hack and blast design soar. But I can't deny that this demo's simple combat engagements and exploration left me feeling detached from a concept I really want to engage with.
What the fuck, bro?
Energy level restored.
Yeah, baby. We did it. This is how we say good job.
For more from Capcom at Gamescom 2025, check out our hands-on impressions of Resident Evil Requiem and Onimusha Way of the Sword. And for everything else, stick with IGN.
Yeah.
Since 2017's Resident Evil 7, a regular staple of Capcom's horror series has been the inclusion of an enemy that stalks you. Jack Baker burst through a wall and into our hearts, the world fell in love with Mr. X, and Lady Dimitrescu provoked her own kind of online adoration. Resident Evil Requiem appears to be keeping up this tradition, with its own take on the hulking, relentless pursuer. And so far, from my small 20-minute sample at Gamescom 2025, it feels like Capcom has created a new, lumbering foe that more than lives up to the mantle of a Resident Evil stalker. The short demo takes place at the Rhodes Hill Chronic Care Centre and stars our latest protagonist, Grace Ashcroft, who creeps through the dimly lit and suitably spooky setting, armed only with a lighter and glass bottles. While I expect that combat will be a part of the full game, there were no firearms to be seen in this demo, so there's an inherent emphasis on caution while creeping around the clinic's handful of rooms and single long connecting hallway. And if you think that sounds like an incredibly small location to explore, well, you're right. My sample of Requiem lacked any real kind of exploration and was largely a task of collecting item A to open item B, which allowed you to get item C and so forth. All sounds simple enough, right? Well, in classic survival horror fashion, your uneasy confidence is quickly jump scared out of existence upon the arrival of the as yet unnamed stalker enemy. After Grace discovers a lifeless zombie, or infected in her words, a hulking claw lurches into frame to manhandle the corpse. The camera lifts just as the creature plunges its teeth into the zombie's skull, both demonstrating the beast's sheer mass and how it has little consideration for the iconic fodder of the series. This new stalker is Lady D. Tall, with the frame of Resident Evil's Lisa Trevor and the vice-like jaw of a Wendigo. She has bulbous eyes, claws for hands, and a Quasimodo-like posture. Once unleashed, this stalker, like its recent relatives, is persistent, promptly reacting to the sounds, sights, and smells of Grace.
Oh shit.
And like her xenomorph stalker cousin from Alien Isolation, this monstrosity can, and will, travel above you through the ceiling space, dropping down as quickly as it can scarper up. Basically, she's relentless and can easily outmaneuver you. Fortunately, there are a few tools in Grace's arsenal that can help you survive though. The first being the aforementioned glass bottle. As you might expect, they're primarily used as a distraction tool, drawing the stalker's attention to the other end of the hallway and buying you time to slip past. It can also, in theory, be used as a weapon, although I'm not sure I'd recommend it. As with most stalking enemies, you can't kill or even damage Grace's pursuer. Perhaps Grace's most valuable weapon though, as you might have gathered by now, is sneaking. While crouching, you are afforded some moments of mercy as you take advantage of whatever small pockets of space you can find, be that under tables or behind corners. It's a useful skill, particularly in the nurse's station room when drawing the attention of the beast is inevitable due to a scripted sequence. It does, however, only buy you a moment to slip by, and even when you reach a safer spot, flicking open your lighter to illuminate the darkness will draw the stalker's attention back to you. Creep as much as you wish, but your pursuer is always hot on your heels, no matter how carefully you tread. Interestingly, this new enemy type does have an Achilles heel, light, or more specifically, the bright white light of a room's ceiling lamp. The tiny flame from the lighter in Grace's hand didn't appear to make any difference. When chasing Grace into a well-lit room, the monster's skin visibly burns, causing her to scream and then retreat. Not only does this put some of the power back into your hands, but it's also a nice interpretation of the rules of Resident Evil's safe rooms. If you've ever seen Mr. X's bizarre backpedaling when confronted with a safe room, you will know this change is a welcome one, adding some well overdue logic to the classic gameplay trope that magically blocks a stalker from entering your safe haven. While there was neither much space nor opportunity to explore, thanks to the small environment and constant presence of a terrifying stalker, what little exploring I did do felt, perhaps to no surprise, very familiar. Like Resident Evil 7, Village, and the series in general, you're managing inventory slots, examining items, finding strange keys to unlock strange doors, and fitting fuses into circuit breakers. It's all very traditional, and fans of the series will feel completely at home. The first-person perspective of the more recent mainline games also remains, and at the suggestion of both the developer and myself, is the optimal way to play a horror sequence like this one. However, following in line with the upgrade Capcom provided Resident Evil Village, you can also play Resident Evil Requiem from the classic third-person perspective. Your choice of camera can be changed on the fly in the menu anytime you wish, allowing you to freely switch and create a different kind of atmosphere. It's an interesting choice for a non-remake Resident Evil game, and freely switch and create a Capcom provided mainline games also remains, and at the suggestion of both the developer and myself, is the optimal also remains. The first-person perspective of the more recent mainline games also remains, and at the suggestion of both the developer and myself, is the optimal way to play a horror sequence like this one. However, following in line with the upgrade Capcom provided Resident Evil Village, you can also play Resident Evil Requiem from the classic third-person perspective. Your choice of camera can be changed on the fly in the menu anytime you wish, allowing you to freely switch and create a different kind of atmosphere. It's an interesting choice for a non-remake Resident Evil game, and certainly doesn't feel like an afterthought, even though it may cynically appear to be at first. In a way that perhaps only a AAA budget game can, both viewpoints are extremely well designed, with moments tailored for each experience to maximise the player's fear. In first person, the stalker looms larger and feels significantly more imposing, with the restricted field of vision allowing for scripted scares to have more impact. During the demo, you're forced to make some noise by moving a cart across the room to create a step to reach your next item of importance. With the more focused first-person viewpoint, mid-action you're treated to a giant, claw-shaped signifier of the beast's impending arrival scraping past the window. It's a panic-inducing moment, and one that loses its power when your hyper-specific point of view is opened up wide by a third-person camera. It's clear though that Capcom is aware of this, and has made effort to maintain its scares despite your viewing preference. And in that short gameplay slice, that ethos was perfectly demonstrated. In first person, just after the stalker's introduction, you simply turn around to smoothly run down a hallway as fast as you can, leaving the stalker in your wake. And it's only the sounds of her shambling that follow that remind you that you're actually in danger. In third person, however, perspective-specific animations have great stumble and fall, building up the tension to make up for the reduced level of threat produced by the wider, vision-granting perspective. It's a lovely touch, and something I'm hoping to see a ton more of in the full game, hopefully providing ample amounts of horror despite your perspective preference.
Hey!
My short playtime was such a small sample size of Resident Evil Requiem that it's very hard at this early stage to know whether ninth entry in the mainline series will fit in comparison to its predecessors. And that's assuming that this scenario in the demo will even feature in the full game at all. There's a distinct possibility of this just being a bespoke demo, something that Capcom has prior experience in with Resident Evil 7's beginning hour. But even if this is just a tonal example, it's very hard to not be excited for what horrors Resident Evil Requiem has in store for us when this unstoppable beast arrives in 2026. And if you like that video and you want to learn more about Resident Evil Requiem, why not check out the entire history of Raccoon City, getting you up to speed on everything you need to know about Requiem's key location. And for everything else Resident Evil, be sure to stick with IGN.
Crossovers. You know them, you love them, you might hate them actually, and they make you spend an entire decade debating whether or not Geno should be included in Smash. Crossovers and collaborations have become quite the unavoidable cultural staple. In every facet of life too, you hit up the supermarket, you'll see Cosmic Brownie cereal, Flamin' Hot Cheetos mac and cheese. Need new kicks? How about the Ben & Jerry's? Even in the afterlife, Van Gogh teamed up with the Pokemon TCG and created promo cards that currently resell for over 200. Capitalism ho! You could spend an entire lifetime yapping about every time the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles have popped up in something, but we're here to talk about specifically video game crossovers, which I guess means spending an entire lifetime talking about every time Geralt of Rivia has made an appearance. Daemon Ex Machina? Really? But this is gonna go way beyond the new-aged Fortnite-ification of IPs. Prior to recent times, the idea of this was more novel, and it'd be in the places you'd least expect. Look, all I'm saying is if you've ever wanted to see Klonoa race a motorbike against real people, MotoGP's got you covered. Be they weird, ambitious, or just stupid, we're gonna tackle them all, or at least most of them. I don't have the thousands of dollars required to get every gacha collab with Persona or Nier, which now includes Foamstar with 2B and 9S, right before they're stopping all updates. Pour one out for the foamers, y'all, another for the curse. So yo, it's Austin, and welcome to IP Soup. We're gonna be diving together into the world of ridiculous video game crossovers. And I do mean ridiculous. Some of these collabs and video game crossovers go so off the rails that I don't really know how to begin to explain why. These have been going on since the beginning of time, so there's a lot to dive into. But before we do, we gotta check in with our FC. Today's video has been sponsored by UFL. What's that? Well, we gotta talk about soccer, or rather football. I gotta make sure everyone knows what I'm talking about. No, I'm no good at it myself, considering the whole, YouTube thing, but I do like watching and playing football virtually. I've talked about my love for sports games in the past, and UFL is a brand new sports sim coming to the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series. I'm talking free-to-play footy, a hybrid of sim and gameplay that's fair. It's very accessible, exciting, and filled with skill-based challenges and a rich meta to explore. It's a dynamic football universe where players can create their own clubs and recruit real-world stars for their teams. UFL is aiming to revolutionize the football sim category by going for a AAA free-to-play experience. It has an unlimited life cycle for clubs and player progress without reset. All this with next-gen graphics in UE5. It's even been supported by top football ambassadors like Cristiano Ronaldo. And it gets better. Adidas has joined the UFL as the official global season partner, bringing the exclusive Adidas Team Pass to the game. Unlock iconic gear, a custom stadium, and exclusive franchises. Compete in-game quests for unique rewards and enjoy real-world perks, like a 15% discount on select Adidas items. Level up in-game and off the pitch. Look, they want to prioritize skill over everything else because at the end of the day, UFL is about the game. Why do we play football? We play for football, the thrill of the game. And UFL's mission is to create a massive global league for everyone. So if this seems like your kind of thing, click the link down in the description and download UFL for PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series. Play UFL now, play for football. Thanks to UFL for the sponsor, but for now, we gotta get back into the crossover dimension. I figured that it was best to start near the beginning, back when these things were pretty novel and also mostly made no sense. Crossovers used to be treated like a big deal. Aliens vs. Predator was a novel idea tossed around in 80s comics and games before hitting the big screen. King Kong and Godzilla might have recently thrown hands and lasers in theaters, but they've been battling since 1962. But this ain't about Abbott and Costello meet Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. This is video games, and as I gather, the first to attempt it in the 80s was Konami. Before the weird platform-exclusive characters in Super Bomberman R, before the crazy racing on the Game Boy Advance, before Parodius, came a game called Konami YY World. Why? I don't know, but have you ever wondered what fan-favorite characters a crossover game by Konami would have? If your guess was King Kong or Mikey from the Goonies, you're in luck. Wait, the Goonies? Turns out Konami developed and published both King Kong and Goonies for the Famicom and NES, presumably had residual likeness rights, slapped them in this platformer and said, money please. YY is your typical 8-bit platforming romp. You go from stage to stage fighting dudes, bosses, and jumping over pits. Just this time the levels are based off of classic Konami games like Castlevania and a bunch of Japanese exclusive titles like Getsu Fumaden. Prepare to have Dracula just show up randomly and destroy you. What's the plot, you ask? What plot? Konami World is under attack. Dr. Cinnamon makes 2 androids, Konami Man and Lady, to save the day. It's fun to run around as Simon and just kill stuff from other games, and the background music changes to each character's theme whenever you switch to them. And you can play as Goemon. Yeah, Goemon. Also, there's a shmup stage where you can play as Vic Viper or Twin Bee. Basically, you gotta save Konami World by playing as Mikey from the Goonies and kicking dudes in the dig. Unfortunately, this one never made it to the US. Same with the Compati Hero series. You might know it as Battle Dodgeball or Soccer, but what really matters is that Banpresto opened the floodgates and made a bunch of games starring Ultraman,
Can you use controller?